Yeah, we had the designers that we curated choose a bunch of fabrics from like some dead stock.
Is that me?
Maybe you're magnetic?
Maybe. It was a beautiful night last night. We had designers choose from dead stock fabrics that are, like fabrics that are going to landfills, and they reappropriated it into their own collection, and they showed it last night on the water, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, part of our journey in the last 3-4 years has been kind of a move towards working with dead stock fabrics, not milling any new fabrications. So it was something that we wanted to hopefully pass along to the 5 designers, sort of give them a pathway to thinking about creating differently or making clothes differently, which they already do and have been. So it really using to inject their own personality into the mix. So it was cool to see what they did with it and how it all turned out. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I noticed, just being here, and for me, this feels like quintessential New York. And I know you guys are fully, I remember talking to you about some of the first collections, and you were telling me about taking a Metro card and what it meant, like a kind of it gave you access to the sea. What does it mean to be a designer in New York, and what does it also feel like to see this new generation of designers, coming through this sort of next iteration of Made?
To see this new generation of designers, it's like we're learning a lot from them, essentially, because we're seeing New York through their eyes, like, if that makes sense. Like, yes, we're born and raised in New York. A lot of those designers are too, some aren't. But they're seeing New York in their own right, and you kind of just learn, and they're showing you things that you've never seen.
Yes. And it's, like when you talk about American fashion, New York City is the capital of it, yeah? And so if you are going to make a name for yourself or for your brand, then it has to pass through New York. And, this program Made by PayPal is so important. It helped launch our career, and it gives you sort of this boost of confidence, like to be able to show, to be able to present in, this backdrop. I think for their first show was an amazing opportunity. And, it's so cyclical, right? That you have all these designers and people, part of the fashion community, kind of working together to create something new, which is why we called it New Wave New York, is that you always constantly have this cycle of new talent, new ideas, new approaches. So to be able to have a platform for them to get out their dreams and their ideas, it's critical, super critical. And so we're fortunate to have been a product of that, and feel responsible in a way to be able to pass that along to the next generation. And hopefully, when they get to wherever they get to, then they will pass it on. So it's like a kind of like a visual history of what New York City represents, right? Like Max is saying, our interpretation of how New York City influenced us and inspired us. We put that out there, and then they sort of build on top of that. So you have all these levels of foundation building on top of each other, continue to create the history of fashion, of New York City fashion designers.
So let's get real for a minute.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, putting on a show is very nerve-wracking, but this time, it wasn't. You kind of were able to take a slightly more of a backseat. What do you remember about the first Made show that you did? Like, what went wrong? What went right? Like, I do remember it being quite a great show, but like, what what's the best thing about putting on a show, and what's kind of like what are the nerve-wracking moments?
I think the best part about putting on the show is actually showing the show, right? And everything that leads up to it that nobody sees behind the closed doors. You know, when you get fabric in late, or samples are coming in late, and fittings and things that you don't think is ever gonna happen. And somehow in the 25th hour, a magical moment happens. You're like throwing a fit, and then somehow 2 minutes left, it happens. And then it gets on the runway, but nobody knows from where they're sitting the hectic and the chaos behind stage.
Did you guys ever have any arguments backstage?
We have arguments, but not backstage at the show. Like then we're just like in a whole other mindset. But prepping to the show, yes, probably. But
yeah, leading up to the show, there's so many people that work on the show, not just the designers. And that was a great thing that I remembered was our first show with Made. We walked in and I was like, wait, all these people are working on the show for us? Like, this is for us? Because before that, it had just been Max and I and our team and our friends and family. And then, Made, that program was, then we had dressers and hair and makeup and, nails and production people. And that was, that was crazy to see, like walking into the space. Our show was always Sunday morning at 11. We would get there, 7 a.m. And just to arrive and see all these people working on your idea. Like I felt that last night to see the designers, seeing the entire team, the production team, the runway crew. I mean, this is a hell of a show for them to first start out with. But it's so many people involved in the entire process that you kind of just hope for the best. I think after a few shows, we just learn, it's like by that time, by show morning, it's out of your hands. Like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. And so you just have to trust and believe and have fun. And then it's after the show that you really have time to reflect on sort of what happened.